The floor polish always dried uneven near the windows. The salt wind from the nearby coast dragged dust in sideways. No matter how tight the seals on the hanger were, he didn't mind. He'd stopped trying to make it perfect years ago. Mr. Gray moved the mops slowly across the linoleum of the simulator wing. Left to right. Pause. Shift. Repeat. No one greeted him. They rarely did. It was 0540. The younger aviators were filing into the adjacent ready room, yawning, tossing water bottles into chairs, joking too loudly for the hour. Their uniforms were crisp, their haircuts exact. Behind the divider glass, Gray worked like a ghost. He wore the standard contractor jumpsuit, navy blue with the base logo faintly stitched on the sleeve. No rank, no ribbon. Just a small brass keyring clipped to his belt, old and dull, with a round compass attached. He never looked at it, but he always wore it. "Hey, check out the janitor," one of the recruits muttered. "Been here longer than the damn building." Laughter. Harmless, lazy. Gray didn't respond. He never did. Just moved to the control console of the old carrier landing simulator. It wasn't in use yet, but the display screen showed a slight drift in its alignment. He reached up, adjusted the horizontal trim. Just 2 notches. No password needed. He knew the panel by feel. No one noticed. But 10 minutes later, when Lieutenant Mackin sat down for his first run of the day, the simulated deck readouts aligned perfectly for the first time in weeks. "That's weird," Mackin mumbled. "It was jittery yesterday. Maybe they finally updated the firmware," his buddy replied. They didn't. From behind the glass, Gray watched the simulated approach on the monitor. He didn't blink. When Mackin pulled up slightly too soon, the instructor gave a half-hearted correction. Gray whispered to himself, almost inaudibly, "Throttle down half, hold altitude. Let the carrier come to you." The landing was still rough, but better. He wiped the same spot on the floor again, though it was already clean. By 06:15, the room had emptied. Briefing had started. Voices faded down the corridor. Gray stood alone beside the simulator chair, the edge of his reflection visible in the dark monitor screen. He reached into his pocket and took out a folded slip of cloth, frayed on one edge. He didn't unfold it, just held it once, then put it back. Then walked out, unnoticed, down the same corridor where the recruits had passed. It was just after lunch when the main simulator failed to calibrate. The junior techs hovered over the console, tapping, reloading, arguing about firmware packages and display lags. The instructor leaned back with arms folded, clearly annoyed. "They're going to miss a full session at this rate," he muttered. One of the recruits offered. "We could run cold starts in the backup pod?" "No terrain data," the tech said. "You want to simulate a landing blind?" Mackin was already suited up, helmet in hand, watching it all fall apart. That's when Mr. Gray walked in. No announcement, just a quiet step across the room, mop set aside, cloth tucked into his belt. He moved toward the console. No one stopped him, maybe because they barely noticed him at all. He looked at the display once, didn't touch it, then leaned toward the right side trim panel, found a small recessed switch under the edge, and clicked it 3 times. The main screen flashed once, then aligned, clear, centered. Carrier deck stable. The room went still. The tech blinked. "What the?" Gray spoke without looking at anyone. "If the HUD's catching those lag from the terrain memory buffer, cycle the backup circuit manually. Software can't fix muscle memory." Then he turned, picked up his mop, and left the room. Mackin followed him out a few seconds later, caught up with him by the side hall, where the mop bucket creaked over uneven tile. "Excuse me," Mackin said, unsure why he felt nervous. "Have you worked on flight sims before?" Gray didn't stop walking. "Not in a while." "You knew exactly what was wrong." "Still walking," Mackin added. "That wasn't in any tech manual I've seen." Finally Gray paused, looked at him. Not sharp, just steady. A weight behind the eyes that didn't invite questions. "You ever land at night with one engine down?" he asked. Mackin shook his head. Gray gave a single nod. "Then you learn to fix what breaks. Before it breaks." Then he kept walking. That night Mackin stayed late. He pulled up the maintenance logs, looked for Gray's name. No flight certs. No records. Just Gray, L. Facilities custodial rotation cleared. Nothing more. Except one note under former ID, listed an expired line. Captain L. Gray, VR 204. He stared at the letters, then at the simulator across the dark room. Something didn't add up. The storm rolled in just after sunrise, long bands of wind curling off the coast, shaking the old glass windows in their frames. Training flights were grounded for the morning. Sim time only. Inside the simulator wing, Mackin sat strapped into the chair, gloves snug, helmet perched beside him. Across the room, instructors ran a simulated carrier approach in crosswind. New terrain data. Narrow deck zone. The kind of setup that punishes hesitation. Mackin glanced once toward the far window. Mr. Gray was there again. Not inside the sim room, just beyond the glass, pushing a mop across the corridor floor with slow, even strokes. But his eyes, they were on the screen. The instructor leaned over the console. All right, Mackin, approach vector is tight. You've got 12 seconds of wind shift at drop zone. Be ready to trim hard right. Mackin gripped the yoke. The simulation began. Carrier appeared through dense clouds. Audio buzzed low with calm chatter, all fake, all pre-programmed. He reached mid-glide. Nose drifted slightly. Then, from behind the glass, Gray's voice. Quiet, unamplified. But Mackin heard it through the wall. Flaps down 2 ticks. Left rudder correction. Hold that yaw. It came before the instructor said a word. 2 seconds later, the instructor repeated the same correction over the headset, word for word. Mackin's hands moved automatically. The aircraft touched down. Clean. Precise. Centered perfectly. Silence in the room. No applause. No comment. Mackin pulled off his gloves slowly, heart ticking faster than it should. He stood, walked to the door, stepped into the hallway. Gray was gone. Just the wet marks of the mop fading behind him, leading toward the far corridor. Mackin followed them, down past storage, past the old radar room, around the back where no one really went anymore. He stopped outside a narrow door, locked, painted gray like everything else. Next to it, a small control box, scratched, dented, and on the side of the panel, nearly invisible under layers of dust, was a carved nameplate. Carrier OPS Sim, Captain L. Gray Ret. Mackin reached out, brushed away the dust, and the plate gleamed. Mackin walked into the ready room still holding the dust from the nameplate on his fingers. The room was full, a dozen pilots half-suited, chairs squeaking, someone tossing protein bars across the table. The wall screen scrolled through weather updates, but no one watched. He didn't speak right away. Just stood near the edge, eyes fixed on the sim logs. Did anyone ever check the nameplate in the old ops sim room? He asked, voice low but clear. Someone snorted. You mean the one they use for mop storage? Mackin didn't smile. There's a name on it, he said. It says Captain L. Gray. Retired. That got a few looks. The instructor, Lieutenant Harrow, glanced over, brow lifted. You mean Janitor Gray? I think he flew. Laughter now, full, unchecked. Come on, Mac, said one of the others. That guy walks like he's got gravel in both knees. You think he was a carrier pilot? He knew the corrections, Mackin said flatly. Before the sim called them. He's probably watched 1,000 runs while mopping floors. Doesn't mean he flew them. Harrow stood up, stretched his arms. You want to look into ghosts, be my guest. But I promise you, if he had a record, we'd know. Someone tossed a worn rag toward the trash. Maybe he landed a mop on time. More laughter. Mackin didn't reply. But his eyes didn't move from the screen. The wind outside battered the pane with a gust. One of the lockers creaked in the corner. The room went momentarily still. Later that night, Mackin sat alone in the sim room. No lights on. No instructors. Just him and the chair. He ran the carrier approach again, the hardest one. The one no one wanted during quals. Halfway through the glide, he heard the door open behind him. No boots. No voice. But when he turned, Mr. Gray was standing just inside the shadowed threshold. He didn't move forward. Didn't interrupt. Just nodded once, barely noticeable. And then, for the first time, Mackin spoke first. Did you really fly the ridge line without lights? Gray didn't answer right away. Then, softly, only once, he walked away. The base hadn't seen a visit like this in months. A decorated former commander, Brigadier Cole, was scheduled to tour the sim wing as part of a legacy outreach program. Just a formality. Shake some hands, say something about tradition, be gone before lunch. Everyone scrubbed the floors, polished the simulator surfaces. Even the vending machine got restocked. Gray was already there. No one asked him to be, he just was. Quiet, early, cleaning the base of the flight instructor's platform, bucket and rag in hand. Mackin spotted him before the others arrived. He didn't interrupt. At 0920, Cole stepped through the doors with a pair of aides behind him and a press liaison who looked more interested in her tablet than the hangar. "Sim looks better than the one I flew back in '98, he said, running a gloved hand over the instrument panel. One of the junior techs smiled politely. "And you'll meet our support crew next. Custodio rotates in early, makes sure everything's clean for drills." Cole turned, eyes scanning lazily. They landed on Gray. Just a mop, blue uniform, no ribbons, no salute, and then, everything stopped. Cole froze in place. The room didn't notice at first. Aide kept talking. Press liaison moved toward the wall. But the commander's breath caught, just for a second. His eyes narrowed. "Wait," he said, voice low. "Is that?" He took 2 slow steps forward. Gray didn't look up, didn't speak, didn't stop wiping the metal bar. But Cole kept walking. Then softly, "Lance Gray. Carrier 7. Black Squall Recovery. Night deck, no tower." Silence. Gray straightened, met his eyes. "I told them not to file it. The tower was already down." Cole just stared. "You shouldn't be mopping floors. I asked to be left out of the rotation." Cole didn't argue, didn't salute. Just stood there, shoulder to shoulder, with a man no one else in the room seemed to recognize. Then, the press aide finally noticed the quiet. She whispered to the junior officer nearby, "Who is he?" And the officer replied without thinking, "Custodian." But Cole corrected her. Not loudly, not with rank, just a single sentence. "No. That man landed a carrier bird blind, in open storm, brought 7 of us homes." The hallway outside the sim room felt quiet. The air held something heavy now, not spoken but known. Mackin watched from a few steps back, unsure whether to approach or just absorb what he'd witnessed. Brigadier Cole hadn't taken his eyes off Gray, not with admiration, but with memory. Finally, the old commander spoke again. His voice dropped into something quieter, almost reverent. "You didn't eject." Gray didn't answer right away. Just set the mop aside, folded his rag once, and placed it over the bucket. Then, without ceremony, he rolled up his right sleeve. The line ran from wrist to elbow, pale, jagged, clean like metal once did its worst. Cole didn't flinch. Gray finally said, "They would have lost the deck, and the deck meant the next 5 landings didn't happen. I stayed in. We watched you come in sideways." Cole said. "Radio said no contact, but you lined up anyway. Lost NAV 2 clicks out. Manual trim. Wind caught the wing." He tapped his temple gently. "I flew it by the compass." Mackin stepped forward now, just enough to be seen. Gray noticed, didn't say anything. Mackin nodded toward the compass at Gray's hip, that old brass keyring clipped to his belt. It had always looked out of place. Too personal. Too worn. "That's what you used?" he asked, voice soft. Gray looked down at it, thumbed the face once. "It's always been 2 degrees off, but it's honest." Behind them, the rest of the room had quieted. No more chatter. No more jokes. The instructor stood in the back, arms crossed, watching the moment settle. Cole gave a slow nod, one of those gestures between aviators who never flown the same bird, but knew the same weight. Then he stepped aside, let Gray pass without a word more. As Gray walked toward the rear exit, he paused next to Mackin. Didn't look at him, just said, "Next time the crosswind pulls you off your mark, don't fight it. Let it take you 5 degrees. Then bring it back slow." Mackin blinked. Sid. "That's not in the flight manual." Gray stepped into shadow. "Neither was the storm," he replied softly. The hallway outside the lower locker room was lit by a single flickering panel overhead. Somewhere far off, the echo of late-night maintenance clattered through pipes, but down here, the base had gone still. Mackin waited. Not in uniform. No clipboard. No questions rehearsed. Just stood leaning against the wall, helmet bag at his feet, posture quiet. The door opened at 22:04. Gray stepped out in the same jumpsuit, sleeves rolled, a folded flight towel in his hand. He didn't seem surprised to see the young pilot there. He stopped. Looked at him once. "You waiting for someone?" he asked. "I was hoping," Mackin said. "You'd give me one." Gray didn't answer right away. Then, "One what?" Mackin took a breath. A landing. A long pause. Not uncomfortable, just real. Gray glanced down the hallway, then back toward the closed locker door. He tilted his head slightly, like he was listening for something distant. "You think I kept that compass for nostalgia?" Mackin didn't speak. Gray continued, It's not about where you're pointed. It's what's pulling you sideways. He stepped past him, motioned with his hand. Come on. They walked in silence. No briefing room. No Simtex. Just an old side console, one of the original approach models, never upgraded, built before smart instruments. Gray powered it on. The screen blinked. A low hum filled the room. He entered the coordinates by memory. Midnight deck, sea state 4. Carrier rolling. No NAV assist. Just horizon and wind. Mackin strapped in. Gray stood behind him, arms folded, eyes steady. Start the glide, he said. Mackin eased into descent. The simulated wind held low. Horizon line tilted slightly left. He adjusted. Too fast, Gray said. I'm on mark. No. You're ahead of your fear. Mackin hesitated. Slowed his approach. Now? He asked. Gray's voice was barely more than a breath. Now you land it like you're already gone. The nose dipped. Deck appeared in full frame. The carrier rolled once hard. Mackin compensated. Not the way the manual taught, but slower, longer arc. The wheels hit clean. Tail drag. No bounce. He exhaled, barely realizing he'd held his breath. He turned. But Gray was already gone. Just a folded towel on the console. And next to it the compass. Left without a word. By 0600, the hangar was awake again. Boots on tile, coffee in hand, instructors calling out times, call signs, lineups. But something had changed. The simulator bay lights flicked on with a new hum. Clean. Sharp. Someone had polished the outer frame overnight. Wires coiled properly. Console gleamed. Mackin arrived early. He wasn't scheduled to fly. Didn't bring his gear. He just stood by the carrier landing rig, hand resting on the seat back where the old towel had been, now gone. His eyes lifted to the upper panel. There was a nameplate, brass, screwed into the frame like it had always been there. Captain L. Gray, Carrier Flight Ops. And underneath it, someone had etched a new line. Not engraved, just handwritten, with the same type of label tape they used for lockers. Still flying. One of the techs walked in, looked at the plate. You ever meet him? He asked casually. Mackin nodded. Once. He's still around? Mackin glanced at the chair, the panel, the flight controls aligned with surgical precision. Then toward the compass, now mounted under plexiglass next to the emergency throttle, as if it had always belonged there. He didn't smile, just said, You'll know. When the crosswind hits, and you hold your line, he's still flying with you. Outside, near the far edge of the runway, the wind moved in low sheets, and for a moment, a figure could be seen walking along the outer fence. Blue jumpsuit, slow gait, then gone. No one called after him. No salute, just the quiet sound of training wheels spinning back to life, and one pilot adjusting trim, 5 degrees off, just like he was taught.